and welcome to another day on Cornwall Pocket Farm. My name is Jenny and today I thought I would share with you some sort of tips and tricks and ideas and rules, guidelines, whatever you want to call them. Things that I do when I'm thrifting, because things that I found over the years find me those really great pieces, some of which of course I've shown and shared with you on this channel. I've got so many comments where people say, oh, how do you find such great finds? I never find anything like that. And so I thought I'd just share with you sort of how I do it. I've been thrifting, oh golly, since I was very young. I started off thrifting in the UK. We used to have jumble sales in the UK. Schools would have jumble sales and organisations, churches would all have sort of jumble sales to raise money, fundraising. So I used to love a good jumble sale to find bargains and things that I could make other things out of. And of course that's translated and followed through into my whole life really now, where now I sort of thrift, if you like, at various different places. But essentially for me, the idea of thrifting is that it's second-hand clothing, pre-loved, if you like, clothing like that. And this video is particularly about clothing because I have a slightly different technique for clothing that I do for other things. Now, I should say, I generally don't buy secondhand clothing online, not because there's anything wrong with that, it's just that I don't generally do that. I find that I find the things that I want in person. I like to touch and feel and see things in person. I find that online it just doesn't inspire me. And to be perfectly honest with you, I don't really like being on the computer that much. And I have this, well, I'm going to share personal information with you here. I have this weird thing that when I scroll, I sort of get reverse seasickness. Does anybody else get that? Like if I'm scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, I start to feel like a little bit nauseous. And it is a thing. I've looked online. Apparently, if you're scrolling, it's like the screen is moving, but you're stable and your brain gets confused and makes you feel sick. And it's the other way around when you're on a boat or in a car. Your body's moving, but the thing you're looking at isn't moving. So then you get confused and you start to feel sick. So it's sort of reverse seasickness. Anyway, you probably don't need to know that. But anyway, that's why I don't like to spend a lot of time scrolling on the internet. If that's your thing, great. You probably find great bargains that way. But for me, it's much more an in-person sport, shall we say. And I do think of it as a sport. I do love a bit of secondhand shopping. So when you drag home that perfect item that costs you $10, I mean, it's just such a thrill, isn't it? And hang on till the end, because the last tip, the 12th rule, is the thing that I find is the key to finding those brilliant items. So 12 tips, tricks, rules, whatever you want to call them. And the first one is to know your charity shops or thrift shops. Whenever I say the word charity shop or thrift store, I mean one and the same, essentially. So know the outlets, is that another way of saying it? Because actually they're not all charity shops. What should we call them? Retail outlets? Maybe that's it. Because when you know the shops and you know the sort of stock that they have, you tend to know where you're going to find certain items. So I know, for instance, that one of the charity shops I go to regularly, they have really good books and that type of thing. So if I'm looking for books or if I'm looking for sheet music, I'll go to a particular charity shop. And the same if I'm dropping stuff off, actually. I will drop stuff off at a charity shop that I know will sell it well and get a good price for it. So it sort of works the other way around. But if I'm looking for a particular thing, it's much more efficient and effective if I go to the shops that I know are good in that area. So knowing your charity shop, I think, is tip number one. And I'm sure you found this yourself. If you do a bit of charity shopping, you'll go somewhere and you think, oh, look, they have, for instance, example, when I was looking for those going out outfits for my tango dancing, and just before Christmas I did a thrift haul and I got some sort of posh frocks, if you like. I was going to my usual charity shops and they don't have that sort of elevated outfit, if you like. But when I went to a charity shop in the local town, which is surrounded by more sort of proper retail, more expensive retail, if you like, they had the posh frocks. So knowing which shops hold the best stock of certain things is a key to finding good stuff. tip number 2 is that charity shops have an amazingly quick turnover. Secondhand shops, all those types of thrifting shops, they all have really high turnover. And remember, there's only one of anything. So that means that when you go one day, you're going to have different stock than if you go in a week's time. And if you see something and you think, oh, I'll drop down and pick that up tomorrow, it'll be gone. So because you have that quick turnover, it really has pluses because you're always getting new stuff in. And of course, there is a huge array of garments. There's only one of everything, but there is a really broad spread. When you go into a normal retail store for clothing, you'll go in and they'll have the same item in a full range of sizes and a range of colours. That means that there aren't that many things in each store because they've got to have all the sizes and all the colours in each item. And if you don't like the item, well, obviously there's a large amount of that shop is taken up with that one item. That's completely different for charity shopping, of course, in that every piece there is generally a unique item. So you have to keep going regularly if you're looking for something specific, because it could turn up one day and sell that same day. So I would say going regularly. If I'm looking for something, I will go at least once a week to all of the charity shops in our area. They're all clustered in a small space pretty much. So there are 6 charity shops down the road that way. There are another 2 that way. And there are 2, 3 in the local town where I would get a bus to. So I have quite a number of second-hand options, if you like, in my area. And if I'm looking for a particular thing, I will go to those shops at least once a week to make sure that I see the new stock that's coming in. Now, the other part of that is if I'm not looking for anything, I don't go. I know that seems obvious, but the thing is, it's with charity shops, they always have so many great things coming in all the time. And you go and you think, oh, that's amazing. I love that. I need, oh, wow, must get that. Oh, it's so cheap. I'll have that. So it's really easy if you go all the time to be dragging back lots and lots and lots of stuff that you don't need. And then you end up with a house full of stuff. And I try really hard to avoid that. I've talked about that before on this channel. What I do is I try and have a curated set of things in my home. So when something gets full or the space that it's stored in, it gets too clogged up and too chocker, I clear out and I will take things back to the charity shops. So I keep things in my house almost that I'm just looking after it for a little while I need it, while it does a job. And then it will go back to the charity shop so somebody else can look after it for a while when I'm not using that thing. So I find that if I'm not looking for something particular, I don't need anything particular, I don't go to the charity shops because it sort of stops that temptation to just bring back all the gorgeous things that you find. Number 3. What I also have is I have in my head and also on my phone a long-term list. So this is a list of things that I'm looking for. So for instance, on my long-term list was a good leather jacket. Well, actually it was the perfect leather jacket, because there's lots of good leather jackets, but I was looking for the perfect leather jacket, and that was on my list for a very long time. And then I found it, and that was like, wow, oh yes, this is amazing, this is it. Now, it's very tempting to bring back a leather jacket because it's like, oh, well, it'll do the job. But no, I wanted the right one. So I have a long-term list of things that I'm looking for. That includes things for the house or whatever. There will be a few little items in my brain that I'm on the lookout for. And when I find that thing, very exciting, I bring it back. And that's the way I sort of build a curated closet of really gorgeous, beautiful things that I like and that are perfect, and they all slot together. For instance, on my list now is some light coloured shoes, because when I made that outfit, the dress that I wore to my friend's wedding with the hat and the flowers and all the rest of it, a number of you actually commented that it would have looked better with some sort of pale coloured court shoes, slingbacks, kitten heels, that type of thing. And I totally agree. But the shoes that I had in my wardrobe was the pool that I was picking from. And the navy court shoes that I ended up wearing were the best in my wardrobe for that outfit. So on my long-term list, I have some red shoes. I would really love some nice red low-heeled shoes. I have a nice red handbag, and actually with that outfit, some red shoes I think would have looked rather good as well. But also some pale shoes would look nice, some cream shoes would look good. So I'm looking for those. They are now on my long-term list. I'm also looking for some cream or white cotton gloves, short cotton gloves. I think when I put that outfit together, what I really wanted was some little cotton gloves. So that's up here on my long-term list now as well. And when I find them, which I will because I'll keep looking, when I find them, I'll be able to drag them home and go, yes, that's great. I have previously found some longer gloves, which I think I showed on this channel as well, but they were grey and they were longer and they were sort of like a really fine, really fine sort of kid glove, sort of leather type of stuff. So it really wasn't quite what I was after to go with that dress. A little cotton glove would be perfect. So they're on my long-term list. But having said that it's good to go with a long-term list, you also need to go with flexibility. So sometimes I will see something that's really great that's not on any list that I have. But I think, wow, that will be perfect. That will be just the right thing to go with something else. Or, oh, I didn't even know I was looking for that, but now I found it. It will be amazing. And see point before, don't go all the time because you'll find lots of those. So I go with a long-term list, but I also have flexibility and adaptability so that I'm open to other options. I don't go completely fixed with a search image of just that thing and nothing else. So the next point, the next rule that I have is if I find something, oh, I'm going to sneeze. Oh, excuse me. Something's got up my nose. So this is rule 4. The next rule is that when I'm charity shopping, thrift shopping, and it's for charity, I always remember that it is a charity shop. So if I see something and I think, oh, it could be good, but I'm not sure, should I get it, should I not? And I'm on the fence, I'm undecided. I just buy it because I'm giving to charity. So really, I think if I buy it and I take it home and I think, no, it's not right, then the next time I go to the charity shops, I'll just take it back. And all that's happened there is I've given some money to charity, which is a great thing to do. So I don't feel bad about doing that. If I'm on the fence and you go, oh, no, I won't take it. And then you get home and you go, no, I really wanted that. And then you go back, it won't be there. Because if it's good, somebody else will have nabbed it. So the rule number 4, which I really stand by, is if you see something, you think it might be good, but you're not really sure, buy it. Because it's usually something like $4, $10. Buy it. If you can afford it, buy it because you've just given to charity and that's a good thing to do. Now, leading on from that would be point number 5. When I'm talking about thrift shops, there are a range of different thrift shops that I would consider thrift shops, i.e. anything that's second-hand. So we have charity shops, which are where people have donated things that they didn't want to a charity. The charity then sells them in a charity shop to earn money for that charity, which then they go and do good things with. So that's a charity shop. The prices there tend to be quite low, generally quite low, unless you go to a charity shop in a really posh area. Then often the content of the stuff in that shop is a little bit better quality because the people who have donated it are people that have a little more money, but the prices are higher as well. So that goes a little bit to the point number 1 where I said know your charity shops. You can get slightly better stuff at a charity shop that's in a nicer area, but it will cost more. But they're still charity shops. It's still giving to charity. Then we have recycle boutiques here in New Zealand, and this is where somebody like myself has gone through their closet and they've decided they've got some things that they don't need or want to wear anymore, or they don't fit them anymore for some reason. They will then give them to, well, not give them, but they will basically, give them, I suppose. Yeah, they will give them to a recycle boutique. That recycle boutique will then sell those items on behalf of the person who didn't want them anymore. They, of course, will take a cut. It's often like 50%, so it's quite high, but it does mean that you will get some money back. And then when you give them to the shop, they will often ask you, do you want them to go to charity afterwards, or do you want the items back? So for me, if I'm dropping something off, I will generally say, oh, no, if they don't sell, send them to charity. So it's a sort of an intermediary before going to charity. So when you buy from a recycle boutique, it's still secondhand clothing. You still get some really great finds. They are still generally less than you would pay for them new, but they're not charity shop prices, and that money, of course, is going back to the owner and a cut for the store. Now, with a recycle boutique, I don't know if they have them in other places in the world. They do have them in New Zealand. I'm pretty sure they have them in the UK as well. Let me know in the comments, do they have them in America and where you live? Any other places that you live that you're watching from? Because I'd love to look at my stats and see everywhere around the world that people are watching from. I think it's absolutely amazing. So where you live, do you have recycle boutiques? But of course, the prices are a little bit higher, but they're less, of course, than it was new. There is a filter put on that they will only accept items that are good quality, that are not fast fashion. So they tend to be more branded items. They tend to be more designer stuff. They're not cheap, fast fashion clothes. In a charity shop, you will get everything, really. I think they throw away the obvious rubbish, if you like, but you will get everything. So it's much more of a dig and a find if you find something good. In a recycle boutique, it's already been filtered by the people in the store that have taken those clothes in. So you don't tend to get the real rubbish. You're finding things in a pool, a sort of a smaller barrel. The fish in your barrel are now in a curated barrel. Am I mixing my metaphors? Probably. So quality is better, but the cost is higher. And then you will get another clothing store, which is a second-hand clothing store, which is owned by somebody. So they have bought the clothing from somewhere, or items or furniture or whatever it happens to be. They have bought it, and then they are selling it on to you, and all the profits will go back to them because it's their business and they have bought that stock, if you like. So that's variable. Sometimes you will find things that are really cheap because they've had them for a very long time and they can't get rid of them, so that they're selling them off cheaply. And sometimes those items will be more expensive. Now, I find in that sort of shop, what you tend to find is more like vintage items or sort of pop culture items, things that business owner knows are desirable objects. So with these different types of sort of secondhand thrift stores, if you like, in a charity shop, I would never ever barter. You're giving money to charity, and I'd be like, yeah, fine, I'll pay for that. I'll just give the money that they've got on the label. They've thought about it, they've put a price on the label of what they want. It's for charity. I just play what's on the label. If I'm going into a recycle boutique, again, I will pay what's on the label if I think that is the right amount. If you're not happy with what's on the label for some particular reason. So for instance, when I bought that kilt just recently, the strap was missing. And when I looked on the tag, there was nothing on it that said there was any damage to the skirt. So I thought, I don't know if they've spotted it. So I went to the counter and I showed them that the strap was missing, and I showed them that the label didn't say anything about that. And they took that in and said to come back in a couple of days because they were going to check with their pricing team. And yes, they hadn't seen it. They hadn't taken it into account. So I did get it for less money because of that missing strap. If I was in a second-hand store, a business where somebody was trying to get rid of, it was their stock, they'd bought it, there's a tendency in that type of shop to sort of ask them if that's the best price that they could do it for. That's just sort of the system that works in the shops around us with everything, with their furniture and everything that's in there. You just generally say, well, I want this and this, what would you do it for? And then they'll give you a price that is generally not quite what's on the label. They generally knock a bit off, especially if you're buying several pieces. They'll do it for a slightly better price. So it's really just that sort of etiquette, I feel, of what's acceptable in each of those types of shops. Now, you might have a different way of doing it in your country. It might be that it's perfectly acceptable to sort of beat the price down in a charity shop. They have taken that into account, and they will make that difference on the price tag, expecting to be beaten down, if you like. But for me, I prefer to just pay what's on the tag in a charity shop. I would only bring something up in a recycle boutique if I could see some reason on that garment why it shouldn't perhaps be the price that is on the label. And as I say, in a secondhand shop, it's usual to just ask them if they do it for a discount. So those are the different sort of secondhand stores that I would see. If you can think of any more, let me know. But I'm pretty sure, certainly in New Zealand, I think that's everything we have. That's excluding, of course, the online stuff. So we have Facebook Marketplace, and we have a place called Trade Me, which is like eBay, that people sell things through. We don't have Vinted, which is what I'm seeing on YouTube now. We don't have that yet in New Zealand, so I don't know what that's like. But again, I think it's probably a lot of scrolling. I think that might make me feel nauseous. So those are the secondhand shops, and I count all of those as thrifting because I'm buying those for less than new. They're secondhand items. I'm buying them from a lower price than a new item, and in some cases, of course, they're vintage items, which is great. So point number 6 in these rules and guidelines for thrifting would be know what you're looking for. So I always have a bit of a search image in my head, and there are sort of several things that I keep in mind when I'm thrifting. More on that later. There are some items that I will thrift, that I'm looking for, that I will search for. I'll have that search image in my head, and other things I won't. And that's really about whether you're going to get the quality in a charity shop. So I find that something like a collared linen shirts in general, to be honest, I find really good finds at a charity shop. And I think that's because people will buy a shirt and then they go, oh, but I've got to iron it, and I don't really wear a collared shirt that much. I quite like the idea of me wearing a collared shirt, but then I'm not really wearing a collared shirt, and so it'll be in my wardrobe for a little while, and then it'll go to the charity shop. The other thing is that they last really well. Collared shirts, button downs, I think they call them in America, they wear really, really well. So they last a long time, and they end up at charity shops. Things like t-shirts, the person that's bought the t-shirt generally will wear it to death. It'll go through the washing machine, so it'll get out of shape. And very few of them actually turn up in a charity shop in any sort of state that I would buy. And that goes the same for a lot of stretchy things like leggings. I mean, you wouldn't thrift a pair of, well, I wouldn't thrift a pair of leggings, because generally the person who's bought them will have bought them fairly cheaply in the first place, and then they'll have worn them a lot, stretched them out, washed them a lot, and when they get to the charity shop, if they get to the charity shop, they're generally in a pretty poor state. Dresses is another thing. Again, that's something that people would buy a dress, think, oh yes, I could wear a dress, I like dresses. They buy a dress, and then they don't really wear it, and it hangs in their wardrobe, and then they think, no, that's not really me, and then it goes to the charity shop. Or they buy a dress for a particular occasion, a particular event, wear it once, maybe twice, and then they don't wear it again because it's like, oh, it's not really me. They wear their jeans, t-shirts, that type of thing. So dresses, shirts, certain things like that. Jackets are another one where they tend to turn up in charity shops in really good condition with hardly any wear. So for me, I have a search image for things that I know are going to be in charity shops in good condition and hardly worn, and other things like leggings and t-shirts and those sort of fast fashion brands which are really designed to throw away anyway. When you find them in charity shops, they're really not worth your $4. So in line with that, or following on from that, point number 7 is another one, white. I generally don't buy white in a charity shop because, again, It's a very rare piece of clothing that has managed to get to a charity shop, still be white, not have any stains, not yellowed over time, not gone through the wash a few times and got a bit grey. So white is a really difficult colour. I wouldn't buy, well, you just don't find white items in good condition in a charity shop. I would say that's also the case almost in a recycle boutique as well. Occasionally you'll find a white shirt if it's a good quality linen or something that would be difficult to iron or wrinkle, or it's an event item that's only been worn once or twice. That might be in good nick, but generally white I find isn't a great find in a second-hand market. And we're at number 8 now. So when I'm going through the racks, I have a bit of a sort of a staged sort of filtering process that really sort of hones down on what I'm looking at, but more on that later. What I find is that the woven fabrics really stand the test of time. And so when you find them in the charity shops, they're really just going to be of higher quality, they're going to have lasted longer, and they will last you longer once you've bought them. So essentially when you buy a woven fabric from a second-hand shop, it's going to be in better condition to start with, and it's going to last a long time, and you're going to get the value out of that, the quality of that fabric. And so number 9, why is it in the charity shop? Or why is it at the recycle boutique? Now, if it's vintage, obviously it's had a life. It's been all over the place. So that's not quite the same deal. But for any more modern clothing, why is it at the charity shop? I do try and think about that, because is there a problem with that item somehow? Is there something innately wrong with that piece of clothing? Is there something that sort of in the manufacture or the design of the garment makes it a difficult thing to wear, or not comfortable, or is it itchy? Does it scratch? All those types of things. Is there something wrong with that garment in its function, if you like? I often find that there's quite a lot of sort of heavy knitted garments that have no sleeves. And I know why they're there, because if you've got a heavy knitted item, you're wearing it because it's winter, and then you've got cold arms. So I always think, why is it there? Now, as I've said before, if it's like a dress or it's like a collared shirt or something that needs ironing, it's possibly there because somebody didn't want to iron, or it was a once-off event, or it's too posh for them. It's not really something they would wear. A lot of people aren't dresses or skirt people. They're jeans and t-shirt people. But they're still drawn by the shops, sometimes by a particular event or occasion, to buy a dress or a skirt or a collared shirt, and then they don't wear it. So those items are often in a charity shop because they've served their purpose. But other things will be in the charity shop because they have a level of discomfort somewhere. So I try and think why they're there. And that helps me thinking about, is that going to be a problem for me? It might have been a problem for the original owner, but it's not a problem for me. So for instance, I love wearing dresses. I love wearing skirts. In fact, that's what I wear most of the time. So it might not have suited the person who donated it, but it's really good news for me. And number 10. Number 10 is, what do you wear? So for me, I know what I wear. I could find the most amazing vintage jeans in a charity shop. I could buy them, but I don't wear jeans, so I don't buy them. So always keep in mind, it's the same rule as if you were buying any piece of clothing, really. It's what colours suit you, what do you wear, what suits you, and those rules still apply to a charity shop. Even if you find the most amazing vintage dress and it's just awesome, if it's in orange, it won't suit me, so I won't buy it. I might phone my friend and say, there's a great dress in the charity shop, might suit you, but I won't buy it because it's not for me. So always keep in mind those fashion rules, the ones that, I covered in my tips. I always have trouble with this. I covered in my tips and tricks series. Figuring out your style, figuring out your colours, what suits you, what works for you, what is going to fit really well in your wardrobe and be a core item that you're going to wear again and again and again. Those rules still apply to charity shopping. So have a look at the item. Might be a great buy, But if it doesn't fit your style, don't get it. Number 11. Now, if you're buying second hand, you need to check for wear and tear and broken things. The dress I was wearing in a couple of videos ago, that item was a designer item in a charity shop. I think I got it for $8. It was a ridiculous price. The reason I got it was that because the seam had started to come undone. It literally just needed me doing a little bit of stitching for about 5 or 10 minutes to fix the problem. It's just around the zip, but it just started to come undone. Now also I did some alterations to make it fit better. But the person who had donated it had obviously thought, the stitching's coming undone, and they donated it. They weren't a seamstress, they weren't a sewist, and obviously couldn't fix that and couldn't be bothered then to take it even to somebody to mend it. It was probably going to cost them more to mend it than it was worth to them. So if it's like a little minor fix, I can do it myself, but you need to check for wear and tear, check for stains, check for any seams that are pulling. When somebody's worn it and they're put on a little bit of weight and they're still wearing it, and maybe the seams have pulled a little bit. Unless you're going to take that item in, unless it's a bit big and you're going to take that item in and down the sides, say, or on those seam lines, you don't want anything that's pulled down the side. That is basically going to affect the structure of that garment. Zips are a big one. If a zip is broken and I would have to replace the entire zip, I would think twice about that item, because that's quite a lot of work, replacing a zip. And unless the item is worth it, if it's worth it, I'll do it. But if it's not worth it, the zip would be a problem. Anything that's got stains or marks, you really can't get past that. You could take the punt and think, well, I'll try and get the stain out. And again, if it's a charity shop, it's just a few dollars, you're giving to charity, great idea anyway. I might take it to see if it's worth it, if I really love that piece. But just check so that you know what you're buying. Is there any deal breaker damage on that item that is not going to make it worth getting? So stains, wear and tear. Look on the collars. If you've got a shirt that's been worn and there's some wear on the collar, you can't really do anything about that. Unless, of course, you're going to chop the collar off and do something completely different with the fabric. So do keep in mind and do check for wear and tear and damage, because obviously these items are secondhand. And the last one is, I have a system. Whenever I go into any sort of secondhand clothing situation, I have a filter. The first thing I will look along the racks for is colour, because that's a deal breaker. If the colour is not one of my colours, I like red, green and blue. If it's yellow, orange, peach, anything like that, I'll just skim right past it, because those colours don't suit me. Again, check out my tips and tricks videos and look at the checking out your colour videos. The colour is really important in a garment. So if it's not my colour, I'll just skim through. I'll just literally skim over it. I won't look. The next thing is fabric. As I mentioned before, if it's a stretch fabric, if it's synthetic, I generally won't look at that item, because synthetics, I don't like synthetics, and also, I don't know, I just don't think secondhand synthetic is sort of worth it. I'm looking for those quality fabrics that wear well. Cotton, linen, silk, wool, all of those, really good quality natural fibres, the sort of fibres that I wear and will stand up to plenty of wear and tend to be the things that last really well into the secondhand market. To be honest, you're halfway there at that point. If you've got the colours good and it's got good fabric, that will basically winnow out so much of the stuff on the racks that now you're looking at a much, much smaller pool. You've sort of targeted in on the items that are going to work for you or could work for you. Then you pull out that item out of the rack. So up to this point, it's still on the rail. I've not pulled it out yet. I've just looked at the colour and the fabric. At this point, I'm looking at the item. Do I need this item? That's the next question I'm asking. Do I need this item, and do I like this item? If no to either of those, I'll put it back. But if yes to either one of those, it's a contender, I think. Do I like it? Do I sort of need this item? The next thing I will do is look at the labels. So I'll look at the price label. is the price a reasonable price? This is probably more relevant in a recycle boutique or a second-hand shop. Charity shops tend to be really quite cheap anyway, but even there you can get a bit of a fright sometimes. So then I'll look at the label. Do I think this item is worth the price on the label, and obviously worth that to me? Is it worth what's on the label? The other thing I'll look at is the brand label. If it's fast fashion, if it's a cheap label, I'm like, yeah, no, I'll probably put it back. If the label is good and the price is right, you know, we move on to the next stage, if you like. The next thing that I look at is what is its potential. Its potential might not be in what it is. The potential might be, for a seamstress, the potential might be, or if I chop that off, shorten it, change it. I mean, my favourite ever dress, which was the navy dress that I've actually cloned in the grey dress, that I know a lot of you have commented and said you like, I loved it so much, I took that dress apart and made a pattern out of it. Now that dress, when I pulled it off the rack, was practically floor length on me, and I put it on and it looked really sort of dowdy. But in my head I thought if I cut that off into knee length, it would actually look really quite cool. But I know why it wasn't selling, because it just looked really dowdy. So I pull it off the rack and I look, does it have potential? What could I do to that item to make it really work for me? The potential is also going to be in the size. So that's the next sort of piece, is really what size is it? Now, if it's too big, that's no problem at all for me. I can take stuff in. Well, I say that. There are various levels of big. If it's really, really big, that's great, because I'm probably then looking for it as fabric. I'm looking at it going, do I like that fabric? Could I make something with that fabric? If it's big enough and there's lots of fabric in it, it might be that I'm just buying it for its fabric. If it's a big thing that's like a bit big, but I can see how I could take it in and fit it to my body relatively easily. That's without playing too much with zips or collars or anything like that, which is a bit more tricky. If I can just take it in some seams and make it work for me, then that's okay as well. So too big is okay. But if it's too small, there's not really that much I can do with it. Letting it out, that's not really an option really. You'd have to put extra panel. No, if it's too small, it's too hard and it goes back on the rail. But sometimes you don't know if it's going to be too small or a bit too big, so then you have to try it on. But if it's gone past the colour, fabric, price, label, potential, if it's gone through all of those stages, it's worth trying on. So I'll take those items into a changing room and I'll try them on. And again, at that point, I will assess, can I take it in? How can I take it in? If it's too small, no, it'll just go back on the rack. It's not worth the bother. But can I take it in? Can I transform it in some way? What could I do with it? And then of course, the last step is, if it looks like it could be a go and you're a little bit unsure, it goes back to that point number, I can't remember what point. I'll put it on the screen. Goes back to that previous point of, if you're undecided, buy it if it's in a charity shop, because all you're doing is giving to charity, which is a good thing. If it's in a recycle boutique and I'm not really sure and the price is a bit more than a charity shop and I'm like, oh, I don't know, you can actually hold it in a recycle boutique. So I'll say, oh, could you just hold it? I'll come back in an hour and I'll have a little think about it. They sometimes will hold it until the afternoon, something like that. And it'll just give me a little bit more time to think about whether I really want it. If I'm not sure, I try not to make an impulse purchase unless it is for charity, then you're giving to charity. But otherwise, I'll think, well, I'll go away, have a cup of coffee, bit of something to eat, come back, try it on again, have a think about it. So that's how I thrift, essentially. That's my technique. Those are all the things that I keep in mind. If you have other tips and things that you think about when you're charity shopping or thrifting, please put them in the comments below, because I think it's always useful to share all these ideas. And that's what I love about YouTube, is this idea that we sort of share and we communicate and have that little chat, and that I've learned so much on YouTube, and I think it's such an amazing platform. So if you've got some ideas, please do put it in the comments so everybody else can benefit from that as well. Hopefully that's been of use to you, and I just thought I'd share what I do, because I'm sure everybody has a bit of a different technique. This is just what I've evolved over the years of doing it, and this works for me, but it might be different for you. You might have different criteria and different ways of doing it, so do please share. I would love to know how you do it. Anyway, that's it from me today. Thank you very much for watching my video. And please, if you've really enjoyed my video and found it useful, please give me a thumbs up and share my videos with friends. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed. That would be absolutely amazing, because it just helps my channel grow and reach other people. And of course, the YouTube algorithm loves all that commenting and liking and subscribing and everything. And that just helps my content go out to more people who might find it useful. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.